Welcome to the second video in the outdoor tining table build. This will be there'll be several more. Today we're going to actually start working on the base, and the base is got a lot of mortise and tenon joints in it. There are two cross pieces, one across the bottom and one across the top. We've got a center post that's going to be mortise and tenon in, and then we've got two cross braces. So there are going to be mortise and tenons at each joint, total of 10 in this view. There's also going to be an 11th mortise, which is going to be on the inside at the bottom, towards the bottom of each upright, which is for a center rail to give the table some lateral support, so it just will hold it tighter together. There's also going to be a couple of half lap joints to hold two supports for the top. So the table is going to be good and solid when it's built. This will certainly make it very solid, and the table will be very heavy. It's quite windy in my yard, so I need it to be heavy so it doesn't blow away. So we're going to move on now. We've got 12-quarter mahogany, and I'm ripping these down to width, which is 3 inches. All the pieces on the end piece are 3 inches wide. I kept it fairly simple in the measurements, and they're planed down to be about 2 inches thick. Now I've lined the boards up, cut them all to length, and I've used them together to line up where the mortises are going to be, so that they're all in line on all the top and bottom. These are the top and bottom cross pieces. They're marked for where that center post needs to go. It's much easier to keep everything even if you clamp them all together. Now, to mark each of the individual mortises, I'm using a T-ruler, and I'm marking a center line on the board. And then what I will do is I will mark the edges of the mortise so that they're an equal distance from the center mark. So the mortises are going to be 5/8 of an inch wide, so I'm marking 5/16 off that center line on each side. What that does is that's going to give me a base for where my mortise needs to be. And I can set up the mortiser. So I've got the lines across, which give me the length of the mortise, and then I've got the lines along the length of the board that give me the thickness of the mortise. Makes it much easier to set up on the mortising machine. I really only need to do this on one, since the mortises are in the same spot. Once the thickness is set and the mortiser is set up, I don't need to change it. In fact, I don't need to change it for any of the mortises on these boards. They're all in the same depth locations, just the side to side. I've set the fence of the mortiser so that I'm cutting along the back line. This is a 3/8 inch mortising bit, and I'll have to make 2 passes, which you usually should do anyway to keep the mortise centered on the board. So we'll make a pass in this direction, move it about, I usually use about half the distance of the bit, come down, make another cut. Once we get to the end mark, we're going to flip the board around, and we're going to, using the same stop marks, we're going to finish clearing out the mortise. It's not too bad of a process with the mortiser. If you don't have a mortiser and you have a drill press, you can do this with a Forstner bit and then use a chisel to clear out the rest of the waste. But I will tell you, mortiser definitely saves a lot of time. If you don't have either one, mortising chisels, and you can chisel out these mortises. The nice thing about the mortiser is it gives you consistent depth, and the sides are already fairly square, although you do have to hit them with a chisel. So now I'm taking the center posts, I've cut them to length, and what I'm going to do is cut the edges of the mortises. I'm gonna set the depth of the tenon to match the depth of the mortise. So I've set, these are going to be 1.5 inches deep. So I've set my fence 1.5 inches from the blade. I've set the depth of the cut to equal the side walls of the mortise, probably a little bit less. I always make my mortise a little oversized because it's much easier to take wood away and plane it down to fit. I make the tenon thicker, sorry. It's easier to plane the tenon down so it fits the mortise than try to add wood back in. So I'm going to cut all the long face, the 3-inch face, to this depth of the remainder of the wood. After that's done, I need to cut the sides, and that's 1/2 inch. So I've raised the blade to 1/2 inch, and now I'm going to run both ends of the boards through at 1/2 inch to cut the side depth of the tenon. It's just got all 4 edges of the 2 boards. And then I take it to the bandsaw and I set the fence to cut off the cheeks of the mortise. So we're just going to run it through, cut the cheek off, flip it over, do the same on the opposite side. And then we're going to reset the fence, and we've got to cut the edges. This was filmed on my iPad. It was very hard to make sure everything was in frame, so I apologize. But we're going to cut the sides off now. All right, now it's time to fit the tenon, and what I'm doing is I'm pulling out my trusty bench hook, and the tenon is a little oversized, so I'm going to grab a rabbiting block plane, and I will change the angle in a minute so you'll be able to see it. What I've got to do is I just got to sweep a little bit of the, just take a little bit off each side of the tenon, and then we'll test fit it into the mortise. Be careful to keep your plane level. You don't want to make a pyramid-shaped tenon. And the mortising rabbiting plane is great because it goes right up to the edge. You can see we weren't too far off. Well, it's going to take a few more swipes. You want to make sure that you can firmly seat the mortise, mostly with hand pressure. You don't want it to be too loose. Wood glue does not fill gaps very well, so you just want to take your time, cut it down, and then fit it into the mortise. That's pretty good. Fairly quickly, it fit up real nice and tight. Very happy with the fit of that. Now I'm just marking it so that we know which two go together when we go to put everything together. It's everyone will have a different mark. So we've gotten all the mortises and tenons for the center post fit. I've got them clamped together, and now comes the tricky part. We need to mark for where the mortises and tenons are going to be for the X-brace pieces. So what I did is I measured out half the height of the post. The center post is 22 inches, not including the tenons. So there's 22 inches between the 2 cross pieces. So I decided to use half of that for the base of where my X is going to hit. So I've marked 11 inches down on each side, and I've marked 11 inches out. And now I'm going to get a measurement across that distance, and that's going to give me an approximate length of how long I need to make my blanks. I need to also consider the fact that I have to make 1-inch tenons on each one so that I can hold the thing together. Actually, I think these are 1.5-inch tenons also. So what I've done now is I've marked where the piece hits, and I've marked the piece showing the angle, and I've penciled in my tenons. There's a 1-inch gap on the inside edge of the brace, and there's a 1/2-inch gap on the outside edge. That's because of the length of the tenon. You have to actually come in farther. Still gives me a good sized tenon, a lot of strength. So it's just a matter of double checking, and now I need to mark where the mortises need to go. And I've made that mark, and I'm just going to use a square to bring it up. Very similar to the way that we did it with the other mortise and tenons. The only thing is this is on a 45-degree angle, so it's a little more complex. So we have to make sure that the ends of the mortises are translated well onto the cross pieces and the centerpiece, or it's just not going to go together very well. Measure twice, cut once. You can see we're coming in 1 inch and then a 1/2 inch. And we'll mark off those mortises the same way we mark the other ones. We will bring the line down across. We will use our T ruler to set the center line, and then to set the gaps 5/16 on either side of the line for a 5/8 inch tenon, and then we'll cut it out. And here we are at the mortiser. We've got the tenons marked. This is the center post. You can see the two tenons aren't very far apart because we've got the two coming in together at that center point. So now we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to run one side of the tenon, flip the board around, and get the other side. And we're on our way to getting these side pieces put together. Next video, we will be creating the tenons on the angle pieces and fitting the thing together, and hopefully we will get the sides assembled in the next video, and maybe even a little bit of getting the table ready for finish. Again, thank you for watching. Please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and thank you.